Before we do that, let me just quickly introduce these two streets that we're standing nearby, or standing in. This one here, which you may have noticed the name when you came in, is known as Grey Plain. In the Victorian time, this is where the wine merchants used to be. There's a street down at the bottom here that's known as Swinegate, when indeed in the Victorian times the pig merchants were, and the slaughterhouses. Would you like to come through?
Thank you very much.
No problem. We're going to walk you all down, which is known as, in fact, it's known as Coffee Yard today. It used to be known as Langton Lane, and it's been there for about 350 years. It's a well-known shortcut through the very famous street of Stonegate. Well, you see that psychic flash there? I said stack them out there, you idiot! Get it moved now. I hate people that don't listen to me. Come a bit further this way, everybody else. He's going to stack them up. Go over there and stack them now, you idiot. I hate children. Moving this way a bit more now, please. Come on, it looks like a bloody road accident down here. You can just leave them by that bin now if you want, kid. If you want to stand on them, you can. A bit further forward, fill all these gaps, please. I like it when people are right down below me, it makes me feel more comfortable. If I fall, I get a soft landing. Not that close, kid. Get back. One of them toes. All right, save your film, the photograph. Oh, video camera. Oh. Yeah, sir. Hello, sir.
More action, please.
Yeah, good. Does that camera ever get stuck? 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 Where's this bloody film? That's what I said. Sorry about it. Right, here we go then. We're going to start the tour now. Oh. Thank you, Finn. All organised, aren't they? There's two girls just walked past here, looking at me standing on top of a wall on my own. I think I'm mad. I'm not on my own, I've got people down here. Before we go into the ghost stories for the evening, because we will be telling ghost stories all night from this point onwards, I just thought I'd tell you, for a little bit of fun, about 2 years ago one night, when I'd had a few of these, a few drinks. It was a real foggy night one winter's night, and I thought I'd have a bit of a laugh dressed up in a long black cloak and top hat. So I stood on the top of this wall here on the corner, and below the lamp here, which is now 40 apart, and I was kind of leaning in like that over the top, about 11:45 at night, looking down, and I heard these two fellas coming down the alleyway here with like two women walking in front of them. And when they got below me, when the light was on, I kind of just like went that. And I'm not joking. I've never seen two blokes leave two women so quickly. I left those two women stranded in there. Everybody across the road now. Get across here now, you witch. Here, look, woman, you. Come on, you won't bite. Some of these people are a day trip. Get across here now. Because when this building was first put up, it used to be a printer's works. All right, it's just a stage you're going through. And When it was printer's work, the children that worked for the printers were nicknamed the Printers' Devils of Stonegate. And when it closed down, they had a special tribute carved to the small children that worked here, and that was it, the Red Devil of Stonegate, been there ever since that time. There's quite a few ghost stories down this road. When it was down here from the river, that they brought the stone to the York Minster Cathedral, where in Minster Yard there, or Minster Gate, they started to build what was known as the first Norman Kirk. I remember my first drink. Yeah, she was called Flossie, and she was very, very young indeed. In fact, how old are you, kid? 8. She was 8 years old. She lived in here. This was a doctor's surgery at the time. Father and mother lived here, and this was their dwelling home. She had a bedroom right upstairs in the attic, right up there above your heads. That's where she slept, in the upstairs rooms. And one night, we know for a fact, checking the records, her parents were having a party one night, and when they were doing so, they woke her up, and she came out of bed and ended up on the landing of the staircase and was leaning over the handrail, looking down, trying to hear and see what was going on below. And as we found out, unfortunately, she went too far, and she crashed to her death 95 feet down into the basement, where she got her little neck broken. It was an instant death, but when we found out, she didn't go down cleanly. She hit her head on the handrail of the staircase in numerous places on the way down, and afterwards they found some of her teeth on the stairs. Some hair with bits of skin on with the roots being thrown on, blood on the other side of it. And no doubt, being very young and her bones being very soft, when she hit the hard stone basement below, her head would have split wide open, and all her brains would have like blobuled out onto the floor, blobulating all over the place. It's a new word I thought, especially for the ghost story. Well, perhaps she will haunt this place for many years to come through what happened, because she has done many things over the years, and only a couple of days ago she painted all the windows white. 5 years ago, the manageress of the shop said that she saw a small child sitting on a shelf at the back of the till that she thought was one of the customers' children. And when she opened her mouth to tell this child to get down, she said that it just vanished into thin air and finally out of sight. Of course, when that happened, she realised she witnessed the ghost of the small child, and that was that. Well, I wonder whether it's possible to raise the spirit of the dead child tonight. I wonder whether we can evoke the spirit of Flossie. We're going to try. And obviously, the only way that we can do that, as we all probably know in this day and age, with some spirit type thing, is to hold a seance. So, ladies and gents, without moving your feet, I want every single one of you, it doesn't matter who you're standing next to, I want you all to join hands now. Oh, and by the way, it doesn't matter if you're not gay. That's good. So everybody's joining hands now. That's good. Everybody's linked hands now. What we're going to do now is do the experiment. I want you to first of all, before we do this, imagine Flossie falling down the stairs. I want you to imagine this. Imagine it's 97 feet as she falls, falling. She hits her head on the handrail of the staircase in the first place, and a tooth flies out. It goes down another 10 feet, and then another tooth pops out. And the wrenching of the hair and a big 2-inch chunk of skin comes away from the scalp. And as she falls and hits the hard basement, you hear this clunk, and this child saying, ouch. Look out. And that rage came away. Now, in order to make this child realise that we're here tonight, we are holding a seance, we want to make her feel comfortable that what she's amongst at the moment, her spirit, is this, that I'm her father, Victorian doctor, and you lot are the Victorian party. First of all, in order to get this right, I need to get my Victorian stethoscope out. It's a ghostly one, excuse me. If that car tries to get into the middle of us, what I want us all to do is completely surround it. And then shake it up, alright? Oh shit. There's nothing worse than earwax that's been there for 2 weeks. It's all gone black and hard. Excuse me. Right, ready to do the experiment. Oh, that's very much clearer now. Right, okay. If you're on this, if you want to listen, then stand and listen. If you don't want to listen, do me a big favour and stand and listen. Thank you. Very kind of you.
Yeah, but what?
Yeah, 50 million sperm. Don't mind that, remember that. You can use that on somebody else, sir. Good man. Take it with heart, it's a good joke. Right, here we go then. Going to test the heart of somebody now. Yes, you, sir. One where it says knackered gardener on the front. We're just going to test your heart. Oh, we've got the dog as well, haven't we? Yeah, face the audience there, sir. Just going to put the stethoscope on your heart and then listen in. Yes, still, sir. Well, either you're dead, sir, and my watch stopped. I'm not surprised I said knackered gardener in front of there. Step that way. Bit of cholesterol there. Sort that out tomorrow. Excuse me a minute. Hang on. Right. That's the you sorting out, sir. That's one that's quite safe. Excuse me. Yes, you, madam. I'd like to test you. Send her in. Come in. Give this lady a round of applause. Have her heart tested. That's good. Right. Face me this time. It's all right, sir. It's quite safe. I've been doing this for years. Right, that's it, madam. Keep very still now. Deep breaths. Much deeper breaths than that, madam. Ooh. Well, I'll tell you what. I can't do anything, but I'm getting double excited. What's your name? Where are you from? Sorry? I know I said I'm sorry, that's all. Oh, good spot. Get rid of him. Right, here we go then. I played my part of the Victorian doctor. Remember, we're going to raise the spirit of a dead child here. Now, your turn to play the part of the Victorian party. Remember, she died at the party. Here we go then. Let's see if we can do it now. Oh, Flossie! Look, I didn't give it the deal. Somebody else did.
She.
Come to the party. Come. Here. The laughter. The gaiety. Just come a minute now. I played my part of the Victorian doctor. This is not the dress rehearsal. We'll try that again. Here. The laughter. The gaiety. You know, you lot should get out more often. Right. Well, bloody hope she's heard the party. If she's heard it, what's going to happen now is if I recite the small poem out, if she hears me, what's going to happen? She's going to open the upstairs windows up here somewhere, and she's going to throw cold buckets of water out onto the audience. Here we go. This is going to be good. Oh, Flossie! Just one of those things that her legs she swings, taking
at all, because that's what she was doing on the shelf when she was seen. Oh, Flossie, my dear, you are dead. Do you hear?
You just had a sex change.
After taking a terrible fall. Oh, shit.
You're into this, aren't you, the big way, madam?
Well, it seems not tonight.
But if you look around at your feet down here, you might find a few wet patches with anticipation. Built of limestone, took them 500 years to build, and even to this day, they're still having to work on it because of its vast size and the restoration program. It's just rotting away with the pollution of wind and rain and stuff. It's got many ghost stories to tell. The most recent story that we have dates back to 17 years ago. One day, a lady was walking around York Minster Cathedral in the south transept, this portion here, admiring the carvings of gargoyles up in the air. She was admiring one particular gargoyle, about 20 feet up. She suddenly felt a tap on her shoulder. When she turned around, she said, standing beside her was this man, dressed in a brown costume like this, with the hood up, and a bearded face, a bit of rope around his waist here, but he didn't have the training shoes on. Why are you wearing the sandals? What? The dog's chewing the bud. Well, she thought it was one of the local trams. So she turned, and she looked back at the carving to ignore him, and she said, as soon as she did, she heard him say, did anybody get that? He's supposed to say, in a clear Yorkshire accent, I carved that, you know. When she turned around, she said this man had moved a bit closer. And she noticed within his beard there appeared to be like some white things crawling around. She noticed that he had a horrible smell about him. She thought these things were going to start jumping from her to him, from him to her, and crawling down from that, and it's coming down to the dead region here at the front. Georgian House. We know that it was built by a family called the Dobsons in those days gone by. And for a fact, we know that there's a very strange ghost story to tell about it, which in fact any of you can read about if you wish to do so. Oh, bring it here. I'll have that. Oh, thank you. Oh, go, Mum, you're disgusting. I thought you were going to bring it to me. It's for supper for later on. Here, kid, look after that for me. Oh, we're talking about dead things here, I suppose. Oh, that's just reminded me, actually. Going into things that happened in days gone by, this house here that we're standing in front of at the moment, when it was the Georgian times, when you had to walk the streets of York in those days gone by, you didn't have tarmac to walk on like this in the winter months or whatever. It would be all mud and dirt. That was what it was like. And when I say mud and dirt, I'm talking about the kind of stuff that in this day and age we get used to flushing down the lavvy. because in those days, everything went in a pot at night time, not a toilet, and they opened the windows and they threw it all out into the street. So the streets of York, like every other city in England, if anywhere in the world, would have stunk rancid. And ladies, if you walked around in those very old dresses with long trailing bits at the back, if you're walking along, if say for instance you dropped the hoop by accident down the street, you'd smudge your dress into all where they might be down there, and after a number of hours, the smell would get quite pungent, and if you came home and walked through the door and let your dress down onto the front portion of the hallway, you'd leave the smell behind you, and over a period of years or months, this smell would become very obvious. And it's a known fact that in the old houses, even in the ones of this style, Georgian, the big ones, with rich families, even the hallways used to smell pretty rancid, because in those days they didn't do any different. That's why there was so much disease around. Well, if you hitched your skirts any more than 2 inches off the ground, ladies, and showed more than an ankle length, you'd get into trouble for it because it was illegal. Nowadays, it don't matter. But we know stories of graveyards around York that are quite strange as well. Obviously, up until about 50 years ago, there was no such thing as a crematorium. Everybody went to the ground, everybody that died was buried. But obviously, as time went on, they ran out of space in the cemeteries, and they started allocating more ground, but sometimes people always wanted to be in the church with the family and friends. And of course, when the space ran out, rather than actually mess about doing things, they often put soil on tops of the original graves and raised the height of the graveyard up to maybe the top of the wall, and then they would carry on burying into a very shallow area. But as I know, and it's true this, that because the coffins were so shallow to the surface, that when it rained, because of the wall level being level with the soil, when it rained, the water would run out, and the smell of putrefying, rotting flesh would ooze out into the streets onto the paving stone, and you'd be trampling amongst rotting, smelly bodies. And we know for the fact that people were really frightened of walking anywhere near graveyards in those days gone by, because they thought that even the smell of a rotting body, the flesh, could even give them such things as the plague or Black Death, or whatever you care to imagine. Basic fact. A prime example of a thing that happened was at Holy Trinity Church. If you go there and look at the top of the wall, you'll find that in fact the soil is mounded up like that, higher than the wall, with the gravestones above you. You can imagine that would be the case when it rained. Well, a doctor that lived locally to here was in fact sentenced to 3 months imprisonment because, in fact, he had a woman buried that he said was dead. In fact, he didn't know it, that she was in fact still alive. They only found out about that 3 months later when another member of the family died, and the grave diggers were digging a hole, and they dislodged the lid of the coffin by accident, and some people are quite nosy, like even grave diggers are nosy, and hope they might fit jewellery. When the lid came away, they noticed that this woman had actually in fact turned completely over in her grave, and all the inside of the coffin lid had been literally scratched away like a nail where she was scrapping to get out, and obviously she died of suffocation, lack of air in the end. Well, obviously there was an uproar about that, and he got 3 months imprisonment and never got his job back. But in those days it was very frequent to bury people alive by accident because they didn't have the modern technology, it's true. He said that he saw, coming out of the solid bricks, a man with a helmet on and a trumpet in his mouth. At that point, Harry just fell straight off his ladders. And when he landed on the floor, he said he watched in horror as more and more of these men came out of the solid bricks. They had swords and shields attached to their waists. He said that from the knees downwards, the bottom half of their legs appeared to be sunk into the cellar floor, which appeared to make them look very low and short. And one by one, as he watched, 20 to 30 of these men, couldn't remember how many because he didn't count because he was so scared, marched out of the solid brick wall, marched across the cellar, and they slowly but surely disappeared into the opposite brick wall and finally out of sight. When the last man went in, he decided that he wasn't going to hang around to see if there were going to be any more. Got on his feet, and he ran like flipping head. And for 23 years, after fleeing from this house, he told that story. Nobody believed him until finally, one day, in the same cellar of this house, some builders were doing some work, and when they were digging a hole into the floor, they accidentally dug up the remains of what was once the old York Roman road. Harry heard about this and came forward, He made his story public, and it made him very, very famous indeed. And to this day, he really does believe that he may have witnessed the ghosts of Roman soldiers from well over 1,000 years ago. And I think if he did, it's quite incredible. It was on the TV programme as known as Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World with that particular tale. And it's also in the book that corresponds with the TV series. I suggest that if you want to read the story in greater detail, get the book, go to W.H. Smith's, take it off the shelf, read the story, and put it back on the shelf. It's cheaper that way. So read it. I think we got all our stories. The house is very famous for many, many things, and quite fortunate for me, in the near future, within the next 3 or 4 weeks, if things go according to plan, the National Trust, who have buildings all across the country such as this that they've managed to upkeep and look after, have offered a situation to me where I'm going to be doing a tour of all the National Trust buildings over a period of 6 to 7 weeks, and what we're going to be doing is in fact telling ghost stories by candlelight. We're going to be using old stories from Victorian times. We're going to tell one which is known as The Signalman by Charles Dickens and The Judge's House by Bram Stoker. We're going to do it to all special effects, things like that. The National Trust has said we can go to every building over a period of time. And when you squeeze them, all this like solid cream comes out, like porridge stuff. It's like red light lips in it. Well, in those days, the first symptoms of what was known as the Black Death. Believe you me, in those days, if you caught that disease, there was no cure for it, so hence, that was it as far as you were concerned. Well, she was very young, she was only 5 years old, this child, and the parents obviously knew that they were going to have to attend to her, and they knew that they were going to have to paint a cross on their house and warn people away of the disease. Don't look at the cross now, because it's often washed away in the rain and the wind for years. I'm going to have to do it when I paint them all. Well, anyway, that was the case. It's, oh my God.
Not very enthusiastic yourself.
I know for a fact she died of starvation in this room just to the end of my head. And it's a true story. Historically, you can find out that what I've just told you is correct. From that day onwards, she's been a haunted. She's often seen looking through the window here, looking very sad and distressed. When people witness this, she go around the house, the door. The owners always have to explain that they're the witness of the ghost. She gets seen at least 3 to 4 times a year. It's very popular, and I believe that the story is in fact very true. It's a man that lives in the house, is a clergyman, works for York Minster, and he admits thoroughly to having ghosts and believes them. Not many clergymen do, by the way. They're very strange about that, but they believe in one ghost. It's not someone that grows at Easter time. Well, some nights, and I'm not sure if it's tonight, I'll have to check. Some nights, she takes the form of a pair of curtains. Don't go for the bit that goes with it. We've got one more story to go now. A place called Bedern, where some have been known to run for their lives. Oh, we're going to pass a restaurant, by the way, here. There can be people sitting in the window. Where is he? He's gone in. Shit, he's not supposed to be in. He's an idiot. Sorry, I'm going to sincere apologies. Have a nice evening, everybody. Sorry now. Sorry. Sorry.